Final Fantasy XIV is a massive game with thousands of hours of content. What I'm going to do here is break down some of the major plot points for those of you who want to know more about Eorzea, but may not have time to experience it all firsthand. Today, we're picking up with the Return to Ivalice Raid storyline from Stormblood. The story begins in Kugane when the Warrior of Light, that's you if you're new, comes in contact with Lena, a reporter for the Raven. She's been waiting around hoping to run into you at the behest of Alma. Alma wants you to help her find her father, so you follow her to a ship, the Prima Vista, to hear her story. The first surprise you run into is the fact that the ship is Garlean made. Again, if you're new, the Garleans are not your friends, to put it mildly. The second surprise is the fact that the ship is the home of the majestic Imperial Theater Company, so there are no soldiers aboard this massive warship, only actors, dancers, and other performers. Originally, Emperor Solus enjoyed the theater so much that he built the Prima Vista as a portable stage for him to watch shows on the move. With them gone, now the plays are censored in a fashion to where anyone who performs unapproved material tends to disappear. However, the leader of the troupe, Genomus, Alma's father, decided to hide political criticism in his plays. His current project, the Zodiac Brave story, any of you Final Fantasy Tactics fans will know this name, is a retelling of the Garlean fairy tale, but its secret meanings got past the censors, and it became so popular that the government couldn't get rid of it, so they made it taboo to do business with the troupe, instead causing them to go broke. While that story is interesting, it has nothing to do with why Alma and Lena were looking for you, but before you can ask them to get to the point, your old friend Sid shows up to help explain things to you. He and Genomus had been friends for years, and when he found out his daughter was looking for help, Sid recommended you. There aren't very many adventurers who would help an Imperial search for her father in Garlean territory, but Sid knows that you are less likely to judge people based off of their race than others, so he figured you would be willing to hear them out. He wasn't wrong, and you agreed to the job. Since you've agreed to join the search, Alma takes you further into the ship, telling you that her father had vanished while working on the follow-up to the Zodiac Brave story. The original story followed Delita, a commoner who became a hero and formed the Kingdom of Ivalice, but Genomus discovered evidence of a second hero who truly led to Delita's rise in power. That was the story that he wanted to tell. This man had been Delita's best friend until his sister was murdered and they parted ways. Despite this man still helped Delita, yet history seems to have forgotten him. While the story is a fairy tale to some, Genomus has always believed it and Ivalice were real, even back when he and Sid were in school together. So when he was run out of Garlemald, he went to where he always believed the ruins of Ivalice were buried, beneath the Dalmasca Desert. Genomus found many strange artifacts in the desert, books, crystals, and a host of other things. He believed the crystals he called Auracite would be a major part of proving his theory. The Auracite was supposedly gifts from the gods and filled with power. Genomus claimed they spoke to him, then he began to act strange, staying in his room alone and talking to himself. At least that's what Alma thought until the voices answered him and she heard. Her brother arrives in the middle of her speech and he's not happy about her getting outsiders involved in the search. The boy's name is Ramza and let's just say he's not a nice person. Fortunately, his sister is a bit smarter than he is and understands that they are foreigners who would never find their dad without a guide. Ramza would rather have Sid help them, but he can't until he's done dealing with Omega, a story that I'll cover another time. Instead, he vouches for you before heading out. Ramza apologizes, admitting that he's a bit on edge after his last trip into Rabanastre on his quest nearly got him killed. Despite the fact that the capital of Dalmasca has been turned into a death trap, Ramza is positive that his father's there, since his fascination with the legends of Ivalice has started with a tour of that very city. Sid heads off to deal with his own problems, and Ramza preps the ship to head back to Rabanastre. When you arrive in the ruins, Alma tries to head down with you, but Ramza stops her. The city is far too dangerous for her, and Genomus would never forgive him if something happened to her on his watch. The city was old, but during his studies, Genomus learned that Rabanastre was built atop an even older settlement that he believed to be Lasalia, the capital of Ivalice, and Ramza believes his father is there. You return to the shuttle to plan the expedition, never noticing the group of mercenaries waiting for Ramza. Seeing you makes them hesitate, but they still plan on proceeding with whatever they were going to do. You enter the royal city with Ramza and a few other hired hands and face off against some powerful enemies before riding a current in an underground waterway that drags you into the ruins of Lasalia. You face even stronger enemies within the ruins, and when the fighting's done, you find a strange stone as well as Ramza's father. He is shocked to see that the legendary Warrior of Light came to rescue him, but before the rescue is complete, a group of bounty hunters led by Bagamnon drop down and grab Genomus. They want the Auracite, the stone that you just found. To save Ramza's father, your terrified reporter friend hands it over. True to their word, they let him go, but not before stealing his book. With nothing left to do, you all take Genomus and head back to the ship. Cid arrives shortly before Genomus finally regains consciousness, and he dives into an explanation on how Auracite doesn't actually aid in allowing a person to get possessed by an icon, like they thought, but instead steals the holder's soul, changes it, then puts it back in their body. That information will be useful, but that wasn't what Genomus was searching for. He discovered that Delilah wasn't the sole hero of the Zodiac Brave story. There were actually two others, a brother and sister named Ramza and Alma, the names that he gave to his own children. The reason he knew the truth that no one else did was because it had been passed down through his family. The world knew him as Genomus, but his true name was Arzalam Durai. His ancestor wrote the Durai Papers, which documented the truth about Ivalice and the War of the Lions. Long ago, a man named Oran Durai met both Delilah and Ramza. After Delilah became king, Oran began to work with him. He believed that the people should know about Ramza's role in the war, and he wrote it all down. Sadly, when the church found out, they burned him at the stake. The Durai Papers were never published. All copies were sealed by the church, all but the one Genomus possessed. With it, he plans on exposing the truth and restoring his family's honor. To do that, he has to translate the book from High Evolution, an ancient language that hasn't been used in generations. Until the expedition, there had been little luck with translating the work, but the artifacts found in Rabanastre helped speed up the process. Unfortunately, the book that was stolen had everything that he had learned about the language. Despite this setback, he won't give up. He will spread the truth about Ivalice and his family no matter what, even if it kills him. And that means you're going to be along for the ride. When you return to the Prima Vista, Alma informs you that Cid sent for an Archon from Charlian to help study the Auracite, and they wanted you there to see what she'd found. The Archon's name is Makoto, and she's heard of you. I mean, at this point, who hasn't? The Warrior of Light is practically at the center of everything. The piece of Auracite that Makoto was studying that Genomus had found was called the Odious, and it was one of the shards that was used to aid Delilah in his rise to power. Makoto starts to explain what she's learned, but she uses way too many smart people terms for any of us uneducated individuals to understand, so Cid has to dumb things down for us while revealing that Makoto, like you, has access to the Echo. What makes this Auracite special is that unlike other crystals that only radiate elemental energies, it can store someone's will or their strong desires and make them real. Kind of like summoning a primal, only instead of needing a lot of crystals full of elemental ether to perform the summoning, Auracite has the power to do it on its own. The man named Argoth that you fought in the ruins of Rabanastre was a manifestation produced by another special piece of Auracite, the Duma, that you found after you destroyed the creature, although it was stolen along with Genomus' journal. The original Argoth, based on the Durai Papers, was a weak, petty man who wanted to be powerful, and the Duma stored his will and turned it into the powerful beast that you faced. Alma begins to wonder if the Auracite is dangerous, but her father says that the Ramza of the past also used Auracite with no problems. Makoto gets the idea that maybe the Auracite isn't natural at all, but is actually a man-made weapon that some people may have learned to use properly while others were corrupted by them. Cid wants to continue the discussion, but urgent business calls him away, so he leaves you in Makoto's hands. The next question that's asked is if Argoth's desires were in the Auracite that you found in Rabanastre, whose desires are stored in the Odious? Makoto is a step ahead of you, and from what she's discovered, the Odious is empty, which is confusing to Alma since she heard voices coming from it. Ramza rudely dismisses his sister's questions, however, questioning not only her mental state but her loyalty to the family. The only thing that stops his outburst is the arrival of a Mughal, Apparently, the Garleans had never seen a Moogle before, so they get to experience how annoying they are for the first time. And Mont Blanc is very annoying. He's a Moogle from Dalmasca, and although it is home to a lot of different races, since Moogles are nomads, there's no records of them being there. Mont Blanc wants to join the theater troupe, but Ramza is having none of it. Genomus is less of a prick than his son and lets Mont Blanc at least explain why he wants to join. He had seen a performance of the Zodiac Brave story, and from that moment on, he wanted to be a part of the troupe. Another Moogle, Hurdy, shows up and reveals that apparently Mont Blanc changes his dreams more than people change their underwear. The Moogles argue back and forth until Ramza snaps on him, calling Mont Blanc all kinds of names. I think the Batmole was the best one he came up with. However, calling him a coward seems to be a step too far, and Mont Blanc vows to go out and kill a beast so the troupe will accept him as a brave warrior fit to play the leading role in their next story. He leaves, and of course, you head off to save him from what will certainly be a gruesome death. Mont Blanc was really setting himself up to die because you find him heading into Rabanastre where he's attacked by red chocobos. You save him, which makes him break down and cry, saying his dreams will never come true since he's so weak. You and Lena give him some encouraging words that he completely misinterprets, but they perk him up well enough, and you head back to the Vista. You arrive just in time to see the crew on the verge of fighting the same mercenaries who attacked you in Rabanastre. Surprisingly, they aren't there to fight. They want your help finding their leader, Begamnon. To get you to at least hear them out, they return Genomus' journal and give up their weapons. Apparently, the Auracite that Begamnon stole from you sought to refill its ether stores and probably absorb Begamnon's deepest desires, so to help with the search, Bwagi, one of Begamnon's men, tells you their story. 30 years ago, they were members of the Dalmascan army stationed in Nalbina Fortress. It was thought impervious, but when the 4th Legion took it, the loss of morale was the first step to the fall of Dalmasca. Begamnon was their captain, and knowing the fortress would fall, Prince Rossler gave them one last mission, to escort his sister, Princess Ashelia, to safety. Things went wrong, and she died in Begamnon's arms. Her last words told them that as long as a Dalmascan lived, the nation would too, so they had to survive. The story leads Makoto to believe that Begamnon's greatest desire would be to have the power to purge the invaders from his home, which, with the Auracite in tow, will turn him into a powerful monster. And if he's not found quickly, there may not be anyone powerful enough to stop him before he wreaks havoc on the surrounding lands. Sadly, even his allies have no idea where he may have gone, but there seems to be a new entry in the back of Genomus' journal that had been added by Begamnon himself. It's written in Dalmascan, but the Moogles translate it. It says Ridorana, which is a place south of Rabanastre. It leads to a place called the Ridorana Cataract that many have tried to explore, but all have failed, dying in the process. The cataract is the only place out in Ridorana of any note other than the Lighthouse, but before you head there, Genomus wants to review his notes to see if there's a bit more information on the place. He finds that the Lighthouse in Ridorana used to be manned to keep people from dying trying to go into the cataract. Even though it's no longer filled with soldiers, there's no telling what else might be in there. What's odd is nothing in the Zodiac Brave story mentions the place, but it could have had a different name all of those years ago. Ramza did a bit more research and found that the Valnard Sea, where the lighthouse is, was mentioned a lot, but there were no records of the lighthouse or the cataract, which meant they probably didn't exist prior to Delilah's rise to power. He has a theory, but he won't be able to prove it without going to the lighthouse. The instant you arrive, something feels wrong, and you all split up to search for Begamnon. You find him muttering to himself, and he sees you all, even his allies, as Imperials. The Auracite has already taken control of him, and he attacks Lena, forcing you to strike him down. As he dies, the stone speaks to him, telling him to bond with it in exchange for power. He does, and transforms into a monster straight out of Resident Evil, and teleports away, prompting an urgent call from Ramza to return to the ship. Sadly, there's no saving him now, but Genomus doesn't want to leave the monster that he's become alive to cause problems in the future. Alma thinks that things are getting too dangerous to continue, but once again, Ramza rudely shuts her down. As this story goes on, I hate that boy more and more. But he did find a path at the base of the lighthouse that leads to what he believes are the ruins of the clockwork city of Gog. It was the place where airships and all other kinds of technology was first designed. The location, like so many other things, had been lost with time, but Genomus knew that because of the city's location it had to be built up toward the sky instead of out like most other places, so he had assumed that it was on an island somewhere, and the cataract had been formed after a massive explosion destroyed half of the city, forcing its inhabitants to flee. Garleans are in fact the descendants of the people who fled the city after the explosions, which explains their technological prowess and the people's natural love of the Zodiac Brave story. During the discussion, Bwagi notices Alma's necklace. It was a gift from her mother, but it looks exactly like something that Bagamnon always wore. Ramza gets offended, acting like Bwagi was implying that his sister was a thief just by asking a simple question, and for once his father chastises him about his apparent disdain for other races. He hangs his head in shame, although I doubt it's genuine, as you all prepare to head to the Ridorana Lighthouse in the Clockwork City of Gog. The lighthouse is incredibly dangerous, filled with powerful beasts that you have to fight your way past. Despite an untold amount of centuries passing, the city's technology still works. The transportation nodes send you through the place, but the city's defenses are still active as well. A massive robot known as Construct 7, looks exactly like Worker 8 for you Final Fantasy Tactics fans, guards the uppermost reaches of the city, and he attacks you with the deadliest weapon of all, math. He has lasers too, but math is definitely his deadliest tool. After you deal with him, you run into Bagamnon again. The Auracite makes his body turn into a massive dragon-like thing, and once you bring him down, you retrieve the Auracite that he stole. Ramza also notices his necklace, and he mistakes it for his mother's. When he reaches to pick it up, it sparkles and he passes out. You bring him back to the ship, and while he's unconscious calling for his sister, the rest of you study the two necklaces. The stones in them are different, but they were clearly made by the same person. Makoto notices that even though the stones are shaped differently, they were cut from the very same crystal. The Mughals feel the power coming from the stones, although no one else does, and they know it to be Auracite. The necklace that Bagamnon had was given to him by Prince Rosler and was meant to be returned to Princess Ashelia once they got her out of Navana. It seems like the different pieces of Auracite are guiding your group closer to Ivalice. The other pieces of Auracite had held the will of their previous owners, and Makoto gets the idea that maybe the previous owners of the Auracite and the necklaces simply wanted to return to Ivalice. The question now is, who were those owners? Ramza wakes and his entire demeanor is changed. He starts talking about Ramza Beov, his ancestor, and how he had wanted people to return to his homeland and uncover the truth behind its founding. And the reason the Auracite led you all to Lusalia and Gog was to see if you deserved to know the truth. He sounds so certain that he's right that Lena questions how does he know all of this, since nothing that you've uncovered even remotely would have led to that conclusion. Ramza, quite politely, asks that Lena trust him. The respectful way that he addresses her catches her off guard, and he's even nice to his sister. Mont Blanc mutters that he senses a disturbance in the ether. I'm not even going to explain that reference, you should already know it. But Ramza is obviously different. He touches the Auracite and begins to glow before taking a seat, seemingly exhausted. Alma goes to check on him and he snaps at her. Of course the change in personality was too good to last, and he's back to being an insufferable prick again. When you return to check on everyone, Lena thinks that something is wrong with Alma, but she doesn't want to talk about it around outsiders, so you follow her back to the Prima Vista. Genomus is surprised to see you return so soon, but when you reveal that Lena told you something was wrong with Alma, Ramza gives you a quick rundown. Alma's sick, but doctors can't figure out what's wrong with her. Physically, she's fine, so they think maybe the long journey is taking a toll on her. Alma comes out of her room at the sound of voices, but she collapses and Ramza helps her back to her chambers while Genomus discusses the next stage of the expedition. The two previous places you went, Lusalia and Gog, both appear in the Durai papers, and the discovery of each place is making it harder to deny the truth of the words, but Genomus' aim of having Oran Durai cleared of the accusations of the church and proving Ramza Beov's role in helping Delita become king is still not done. He has a location in mind that may hold clues to furthering his cause, but getting there safely is a bit tricky. He has the Mughals working on a solution, and Ramza not only praises their hard work, but thanks them for it. Lena's reporter senses start tingling because Ramza has been a jerk for too long to all of a sudden become a nice guy without being suspicious. Makoto seems to notice as well, but Genomus is only focused on his mission. The only way to clear his ancestor's name is to find evidence of Ramza Beov's role in Ivalice's history. That very thought led Genomus to discovering a struggle with a powerful, unknown force during the War of the Lions. The Lucavi, or the monsters that were born from the Auracite, were what Ramza fought while the War of the Lions raged on around him. He and his allies fought them until they reached the Orban Monastery. It was the place where Princess Ovelia, the woman who Delita married, was raised, but it was also the place that housed the being who created the Auracite, Ultima, the High Seraph. It is possible that the spell that was used by the Ascians against you came from that very creature. Having seen how powerful that spell was, imagine how powerful Ultima herself might be. From Makoto's research, Ultima appearing on Hydaelyn at all shouldn't have been possible, so it's likely from a different dimension entirely, a lot like Omega. Sid arrives comparing Ultima to the creature that he's been dealing with. I swear I'm going to cover the story, guys. It's coming, don't worry. Makoto had requested something from Sid, but she'd expected a Moogle to deliver it, not for Sid to bring it personally. Lena's more interested in the location of the Orban Monastery, but Genomas has no idea where it is. The Darai papers, however, mention a place southeast of Rabanastre, where a monastery may be on the rivers of Shell. The name is not on any modern maps, but thanks to the Moogles, Ramza believes it's in Golmore. The problem is that the area you need to visit is in Viera territory, and the bunny race murders almost anyone who trespasses on their land. Moogles' magic hid them for long enough for them to see ruins like those in Lasalia and Gog, but then they had to flee for their lives. The only hope of getting into that land is to recruit one of the Viera who have abandoned their people's code and left their homeland, but the turmoil in the nation has made it difficult to find a recruit. Before boarding the ship, someone had asked Sid to deliver a message to you that Abanga was looking for you, and he hands over the device he had crafted for Makoto, although he didn't have a subject to test it on, so he doesn't know if it actually works. With his business done, he heads off. Makoto takes you to the side to tell you about the device and what she's discovered about Alma's condition. She believes the Auracite is poisoning her. Alma had told Makoto of how she heard Genomas talking to the Odious long before he went to Rabanastre, but she doesn't think that's entirely true. She thinks the Auracite showed her a vision that made her think her father was talking to it. The reason Makoto had thought the Odious was empty when she tested it was because it had already bound itself to Alma's deepest desires. The only reason she hasn't changed like Begamnon is because her desires may not be as strong, as well as the presence of the other Auracite on the ship. Makoto told Alma to destroy the necklace, but she wouldn't, and she begged her not to tell her father. So Makoto took other measures and designed a device that should lessen the effects of the Odious by amplifying the energy emitted from the Virgo Auracite in Alma's mother's necklace. As usual, one of the Moogles interrupts you, claiming that a Bongan loitering around the airship landing is causing an uproar in the city, reminding you that Sid did say one was looking for you. The Bongan turns out to be Bwagi, and he needed to speak with you about something important. Alone. Of course, the Moogle refuses to leave, asking Bwagi for help getting through the Golmore jungle since he's so well traveled. Bwagi had come to get you to meet someone, and since you did help him with Begamnon, he decides to bring both you and the Moogle. You board his ship, and he takes you to Rabanastre. With Begamnon gone, Bwagi and his friends joined the Dalmascan resistance. After Doma had won his freedom with a lot of help from you, of course, Dalmasca had tried its hand and was crushed by the 4th Legion. The resistance leaders were publicly executed, but that only made the survivors fight harder. There are a number of separate factions fighting, and Bwagi and his crew joined a group called Lentz Tyr. When their commander heard that Bwagi knew you, she insisted that he introduce you. Their commander is a Viera named Fran, and yes, it is the Fran from Final Fantasy XII, and she knows of the place that you want to go. It is sacred to her people, yet you travel with Garleans, so she has very little reason to help you. If you want her to help, then she wants you to go to your allies and get them to provide resources and men to aid in their fight with the Garleans. Because of your reputation, you are more likely to get assistance than an outsider. If you do this, Fran will personally guide you to Orban, you and your Garlean allies. With the negotiations done, Bwagi takes you back to Kugane so you can get to work on fulfilling your end of the deal. Genomas is well versed in the history of the Viera, and he gives you a rundown. They have been hidden in the forest for centuries with a strict code of avoiding contact with outsiders. However, some Viera break this rule and move to live among outsiders in cities. Fran is one of these. Now that your friends know what's going on, you give Hancock at the Aldenard Trading Company a call. He calls you back pretty fast with a response from his superiors, so you take Bwagi and Lena to see what Hancock has to say. Yugiri and Tataru also show up with responses to your request for aid from Hien of Doma, as well as the leaders of the Eorzean Alliance. Unfortunately, the trading company cannot provide you with funding because it would ruin their position of neutrality and would hurt their profits. The Alliance is also unwilling to provide assistance. Hien is willing, but since Dalmasca's last attempt at revolution ended in a terrible failure that left the resistance a scattered mass of small groups, until they can prove that they can fight as one, he won't risk his people. Bwagi is not upset. In fact, he knew that the negotiations wouldn't gain them anything. It was all done to prove a point to their leader. Fran wanted to show the princess what she was getting herself into with the resistance, and the refusals would teach her a valuable lesson. He leaves to report to Fran, and you return to the Prima Vista to plan for another way to the monastery since you couldn't fulfill Fran's requests. Fran, however, shows up with Bwagi to interrupt your discussion. They should really start locking their doors if they don't want random people just wandering into their ship. While you failed to meet any of her demands, the leader of Lynch Tier decided to send Fran to aid you since you did at least try. Fran shows you on a map where you want to go, and Ramza goes to plot out the course, but Alma comes out of her room wanting to know what's going on. When she finds out, she wants to come with you because the High Seraph has been talking to her through the odious Auracite. She and Makoto have a plan to deal with it, but even Genomus is against putting her in danger. Timid little Alma snaps at her father, questioning his true motives. Does he want to clear his ancestor's name, or is he hunting the Auracite so he can get the power to resurrect his wife? Alma believes that she can learn how the Auracite works from the High Seraph, and they can do just that. Ultima told Alma to come free her from her prison, and she will show them how to use it. Still, Ramza and Genomus refuse, prompting Ultima to reveal that she already has control of Alma. Makoto uses her device to separate Alma from the Auracite, but a portal opens, snatching her away before it can work. Makoto gives it to you, and you all rush off to Goldmoor Jungle. As soon as you arrive, Alma appears before you, floating like a ghost from a low-budget horror movie, the Odious hovering above her. Another portal opens to yank her away as she reaches for her brother, but this time he reaches inside and pulls his sister free. The Warrior of Light tosses him Makoto's device, and he blasts the portal with it, causing it to vanish. A voice calls out from somewhere far away, calling for an ancient covenant to be fulfilled and a vessel to be given before another portal appears and swallows Ramza. Needing to regroup, Bwagi scoops up Alma and you all head back to the Prima Vista, but not before you see an armored spirit that asks if you have the courage to face true evil before it disappears. The abduction of Ramza has everyone on edge. Fran deduces that since a magic rift had to be made to take Ramza, then Ultima is still imprisoned, but it only took a piece of Auracite for the creature to reach out and touch them, meaning that you're all in serious trouble. Genomus has no idea what to do, and Makoto blames herself, although her device did separate Alma from the Auracite as it was supposed to. Breaking down the High Seraph's words, Fran wonders if Genomus' family was responsible for summoning Ultima in the first place, but Genomus denies it. Records of Ultima were around long before the earliest mention of Ivalice. Still, for some reason Ultima and Genomus' family are connected. The Auracite on Alma's necklace begins to pulse and the echo takes over you, showing you a vision of Delita and Auron. Auron was explaining that Ramza had given up his body and stored his soul in the Auracite despite the fact that the War of Lions had been won. Knowing that he owes his crown to his friend, Delita prepares to march his legion onto Orban, but Auron stops him. Ajora, the first of the Zodiac Braves, was not a hero as the ancient stories proclaimed him to be, but instead he was a traitor. He had turned on Hydaelyn for money and power and summoned a powerful creature from the abyss, and only a warrior of light has the power to stand against it. Yet Ramza failed to beat it, despite wielding the blessing of Hydaelyn, and if the warrior of light couldn't do it, then ordinary soldiers would serve no purpose. Alma Beov joins them, delivering Ramza's final message. He wanted all records of him removed from history. When it was certain that they couldn't win, he had decided to do the same thing that Hydaelyn had done centuries before when Ultima was first summoned and imprison it. Ramza sacrificed his own body to seal Ultima away, but he knew that if people knew what he'd done, they'd seek the Auracite's power and accidentally release the thing again. Delita wants his friend to be honored for what he'd done, but he understands. Alma shows him the Auracite that holds Ramza's soul, and Delita sees a vision of his friend telling him to be a good king. The images of the same man you saw in Goldmoor Jungle. Delita has the Auracite made into two necklaces under the assumption that they will guide the heroes of a new era to Ramza to hopefully finish what he started, per Ramza's request. Delita tries to get Auron to join his court, but he doesn't want the church to come down on him when they come after him. Plus, he's written the truth about Ramza down, as well as the real story of their beloved Saint Ajora, and he doubts the church will be happy about it. Delita is willing to hide one of the copies of the book so later generations will have it, but when the church finds out that Auron wrote it, they won't simply arrest him. He will be branded a heretic and executed. Auron and Alma share a look, and she touches her belly, letting him know that she's pregnant, and the vision ends. Genomus is shocked to learn that his ancestor was responsible for Ramza's removal from history, and the person that Ultima wanted wasn't Genomus or his kin, but you, the successor to the Warrior of Light who imprisoned her. Alma awakens and confirms that Ultima was using them to lure you to her. She wants your body to be her next vessel, adding her substantial power to the blessing of Hydaelyn that flows through you, making her unstoppable. The knowledge prompts Fran to admit that her first reason for tagging along was to steal a piece of Auracite and use it to destroy the Garleans. Now she just wants to join you in your fight to save Ramza. She wants to ensure that the High Seraph isn't freed because it would mean terrible things for her people in Goldmoor. No one in their right mind would turn down having Fran fight alongside them, so you all head off to Orban to save Ramza. The Mughals instantly sense that the ether is corrupted in the area, and Fran warns you to be careful. Even her people don't venture into the ruins. Inside, you face named warriors who would be familiar as members of Ramza Belv's own crew to those who played Final Fantasy Tactics and experienced the War of Lions firsthand. The first is Mustadio Bonanza, a sniper and an engineer whose precise attacks can take you all down from afar. Next, you face Agrius Oaks, a holy knight whose techniques will test your resolve. Finally, you face Thunder God Cid, a powerful warrior wielding the mystical blade Excalibur, well, there's a bunch of other swords, and powers that only the strongest can overcome. Each of these warriors are manifestations of the Auracite here to see if you are worthy of completing Ramza's mission and putting an end to Ultima. And with their defeat, they send you further into the monastery until you come across Ultima herself. The creature is powerful, but Ramza's allies who you just fought show up to offer aid, allowing you to drag out a victory. With Ultima defeated, you find Ramza who wakes and is grateful for your aid. A vision of Ramza Belv appears to thank you for doing what he couldn't, as images of all of his allies who fell with him in the battle with Ultima appear behind him. They are finally able to rest in peace and head off to rejoin with Hydaelyn, but not before the spirit of Delilah appears to apologize for not giving his friend a better place in history. The friends shake hands and vanish, leaving you all to ponder what you just saw as you return to the Prima Vista. Genomas, reunited with both of his children, apologizes for being so lost in his research that he lost sight of them, and he begs for their forgiveness. With their quest done, he plans to tell the story of how the forgotten hero Ramza and the chronicler Oran Durai defeated the Angel of Blood Ultima and saved Ivalice before heading off on a quiet retreat to live out the rest of their days in peace. Just like his ancestor guided people with the Auracite pendants, Genomas will guide them with his plays. Meanwhile, in the city of Gaug, the 4th Legion has found the ruins, and amidst all the machinery and broken constructs, they find the still fully functioning Construct 7 that they intend to use to make even greater weapons of war to subdue their enemies. This concludes the story of the return to Ivalice Raid. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next story.